Good evening. I hope you guys are doing well. Just wanted to record Module 2 live session. Again, I apologize for the technical difficulty that I was having with Teams. I was able to get a hold of IT and we got it worked out. So hopefully next week we will not have any issues and you'll be able to hear me clearly. So just want to go ahead and record this for you and get you back to your evening. All right. I hope you guys are doing well. Again, want to apologize for the technical difficulties that I had earlier with Teams and issues with the link. This is not how I operate, but IT was able to get Teams straight for me. So hopefully next week we will be clear to go and everything like that. But anyway, definitely wanted to record this for you guys. So, with Module 2, we're going to be talking about the learning environment. And so, our competency 2 is really going to define the components of the learning environment that encourage active and meaningful learning. The most challenging part of this competency is that some students don't realize that the learning environment is included in the planning process. So, as a teacher, when you're planning your units or your studies, you should be thinking about how you can add different materials or resources into your different learning centers. So, for instance, if you're talking about trees in your block area, you might put tree blocks or wooden blocks that look like the tree bark. Um, you might put apples in the sand and water table to represent apple trees. So there's a lot of different things. So thinking about those studies and units and how you can add or take away materials and rotate those. And then learning spaces should be designed to reflect diverse needs and development of the children in your classroom. So I did have an icebreaker for you guys. When you picture a high quality early childhood classroom, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? And obviously, we have a picture here. You can see it's bright. It has the centers are well defined. You have the natural lighting. It's open. It's free flowing. So that's just something for you to think about. So, why the early childhood environment is important? It is important because it influences children's overall development, learning outcomes, as well as their emotional well being. So, those key aspects of the learning environment is the supportive and nurturing atmosphere, being able to ensure that children are safe, confident, and that they feel free to take risks. And when they come into that classroom, they feel safe and parents feel safe dropping their children off. Next, you have your physical and emotional development, and this is where it should be designed to impact every aspect of development. So that should be your physical, your social, emotional, and your cognitive. And you want to make sure that your spaces are well organized and have materials that encourage children to explore, to interact, and have that holistic approach. Again, those responsive interactions, you as the educator play that critical role in creating that positive learning environment. So, making sure that children have the cues, they know how to build trust, and they're secure, but also it provides them with the opportunity to engage more fully in the learning activities. And then we have promoting social skills. This is where you have a well structured environment will, of course, encourage social interactions and collaboration among children, and this helps children not only be able to communicate but also foster teamwork as well as solve problems. Then you have your cultural responsiveness. This is where children and families should be able to see a representation of themselves. So, not only in dramatic play, but they should see their family pictures. There should be posters in the classroom. There should be books in the classroom. They should see themselves in at least more than one place in the classroom. So ordering those diverse books, ordering diverse art materials, ordering diverse materials in dramatic play, and those posters, taking realistic pictures that represent children and their families. And then lastly, the impact on the learning outcomes. And when we do have those environments that promote high quality learning, children are able to really dive in. They're able to enhance their skills, they're able to learn, and it just makes them more well rounded. So, designing an early childhood environment that promotes diversity and development, you really want to think about that whole entire classroom, how you, as the educator, set that up to really play a role in the child's growth and development. So, defining those learning spaces, so making sure that your interest areas are clearly defined, that you have areas for sensory, like your calming corner, a quiet space, art area, dramatic play. You want to make sure your centers are well stocked and organized. You don't want to have too many materials, but you want to have enough. And some curriculums tell you, and even itters and eckers and sakers and thickers tells you how many blocks you need to have, how many diverse items you need to have. And so that's important that you use those assessment tools as guides as you're setting up your classroom. You also want to make sure you have rugs, posters, visual cues that children know, hey, this is dramatic play, but it ends here, and this is where blocks begin. So you really want to have clearly defined areas in your classroom. Creating an inviting environment. So you want to make sure that you're using warm, neutral colors, natural elements such as plants, wooden objects. You want to make it calm because, again, we know that some children and even some adults get overstimulated. When I was a pre K teacher, I did the boho rainbow thing because I knew I had children on the spectrum and I wanted to provide something that was calming and very neutral. So, again, thinking about the plants, those living things, maybe even adding in a fish, different things like that. You want your classroom to be clean, well organized, free of clutter, and children know every item there is a place for it. Maximizing your natural light. So, again, taking advantage of the light. And it is so important to use blinds, share curtains. Some classrooms don't have blinds or curtains for that reason, for choking hazards. But again, if you do have those elements where you can do that, it really does add a touch. And I know some centers, I've worked in some centers where the um, they had the blinds that came down with a remote, or they had like the tinted windows where you still got the natural light, but it wasn't too overstimulating. And you really want to think about the natural light because it does really boost moods in the classroom. Optimize the classroom layout. So you want to think about the traffic flow. You don't want to have too much space where children feel they can run. But of course, you want them, if you're going to do music and movement, you want to have that your large group area big enough for them to move around. You want children to be able to sit comfortably at tables and chairs. You don't want them to run into different objects. So you really want to make sure that you're thinking about the space overall in your classroom. So you want to make sure that you are incorporating those sensory elements into your classroom, such as rugs, calming scents. Again, with the calming scents, you have to be careful because it may be a licensing violation, but you want that soft lighting. Think about those natural scents, such as lavender, peppermint, to really calm children down. That's why we see such a big push for conscious discipline as well as calming corner areas. So children can just go and have that space where they can really regroup and get themselves back together. You want to think about thorough organization. You want to make sure that you have everything that you need. Those seating options, sensory elements. You want to make sure you have your interest areas. They are all there because they're all going to work together to meet the needs of the child. Thinking about your state regulations, we're all in different states and every state has different regulations. So you want to make sure whatever state you're in that you are familiar with your regulations. So what do your state regulations say about licensing requirements? You as an educator, how do you keep current with those ever changing requirements, because licensing requirements do change. They can change on a yearly basis. They can change every 2 years. And of course, we always know that when rules and regulations are changed, it's probably because something happened. Something new is coming down the pike. So you have to think about that. I'm a coordinator of a lab school, so I get emails. So, we're getting ready to change our 5-star rated license system here in the state of North Carolina. So I have to be well versed and know how that's going to impact my program. So, just some scenario case studies. Here's one. A center has 15 toddlers with one teacher and one assistant. A playground has a broken swing, but children are still yet allowed to use it, and a staff member administers medicine without written consent. So we all know that some of these are violations. Again, depending on your state, I know in North Carolina we can have 12 toddlers with two teachers, one teacher, one assistant teacher. So as long as they're two adults in the classroom. And so for most states, 15 toddlers to two teachers would be a violation. Definitely a violation for a broken swing because the child could get hurt. Potentially causing harm. And we definitely know administering medicine without parent consent can get you in jail. You can lose your ability to work with children. You could be brought up on abuse and neglect charges. So think about those things. That's why you have to know the rules and regulations for your particular state. Staff child ratios. What are the staff child ratios in your state? Why do ratios matter? Obviously, the state decides how many children should be in a classroom based on the size of the classroom, but also to meet the needs of the children. And how can we maintain ratios? As an administrator, it is hard to maintain ratios because you may have a teacher that comes in one teacher that comes in at 6:30 and you may have another one that comes in at 7, but today Johnny and Susie and Mary decide they want to come in at 6:45. So it may throw that classroom out of ratio. That may not be your worry as a teacher, but you need to know that you need to communicate with your director, program coordinator, assistant director. Hey, I'm at a ratio and I need somebody in here quick. And then why do ratios change with the different ages? Obviously, we know that with infants, they are our smallest humans, and they need more care. So obviously, we're going to have less children with our infants than we are with our toddlers. So you may, depending on your state, you may have up to 10 infants with two teachers. You may have 8 with two teachers. It just may depend on your state, what your ratio is, and also if you're accredited as well. That plays a part in your ratio as well. So again, your scenario challenge, you have an infant room, there's 9 infants, 2 teachers are present. Is this classroom in compliance? Again, depending on what state you're in, yes, it could be very much in compliant. I know in North Carolina, you can have 10 infants with 2 adults present. But again, depending on if you have enhanced ratios, which that means your ratios are lowered. If you're NACE accredited, if you're accredited by another body, you may have lower ratios. Like in Ohio, we could only have 8 with 2 teachers. So yes, this scenario we would be out of compliance. So again, it depends on your state, your accrediting body, so many different things. Toddler room, a teacher steps out to take a call, leaving a teacher with 12 toddlers. What ratio issue does this create? It creates a supervision issue, number one, because the teacher leaves this teacher by herself with 12 children. Anything can happen in a minute, in a few seconds. And that teacher that's in the room should call her supervisor and say, I need somebody in here very quickly, because we all know state consultants can come in and out of our program. A parent could come in, a disgruntled employee could call. So there's so many different things, and as teachers, you need to protect yourself. Preschool room, there are 20 preschoolers, 2 teachers. Is this within ratio? In some states, yes, this would be. You have your mixed age classroom, 8 toddlers, 6 preschoolers, staff with 1 teacher. This is definitely a no-no. And depending on your state, you may have rules and regulations against mixed classrooms as far as ages are concerned. I know in some states you can't mix infants and toddlers with preschool. Preschool can only be merged with preschool, and infants and toddlers can only be merged together. And so, again, really thinking about those scenarios and ratios within your program and your state. So, thinking about designing that classroom, you want to make sure that it is safe and that you're following state regulations, that it is set up to meet those diverse needs. It is a yes environment, meaning that children can do. If there's a lot of no's, then that environment is not conducive to those children. And then, of course, we want to have those invitations to play for children. You have your environmental rating scales, you have your Eckers, your Itters, your Fickers, and they all have subscales around space and furnishing. So if you are in a state that uses one of these rating scales, you need to know what those subscales are, and making sure that you are meeting those subscales. So, designing an effective classroom, Again, what elements make a well designed early childhood environment? What can teachers do to make the classroom environment more conducive to children's learning? Changing things up, adding different materials, those types of things is what you can do. So, resources for designing your classroom, you have Kaplan Co. And I love Kaplan. It is here in North Carolina. And they have a great tool where you can actually create a layout. Then you have Lakeshore Learning, they have one as well. Kaplan Co. actually has two. You have Community Playthings, which has a classroom design, and then you have classroomsforteachers.org is another place. So for your module 2 live submission, you want to ensure that you put in the keyword in the submission box, which is learning environments. So, learning environments is the keyword that you are going to put in your submission box to get credit for module 2. So you do have 3 assignments this week. Your first one is your discussion question. So please make sure you are posting your initial post, as well as that you are responding to the required number of posts that is indicated in the directions. And then you have your live submission. As well. So you definitely want to make sure you are doing that. And then you have your written assignment where you are doing an observation of a classroom. So for your observation, you are going to complete an observation. You're going to arrange to observe an early childhood program, center based or family child care for a minimum of 20 minutes. And the program should be licensed in your state, should either be NACE accredited or have another type of accreditation, or it should have a high rating in your state quality rating system. So that should be a 3, 4, or 5-star system. Or if you're in a state that uses like silver, platinum, gold, whatever the 3 highest tiers are, you want to use those. If you choose to observe the program in which you're currently employed, you need to range a time where you can conduct an observation where you are not directly responsible for children. And if you do not have access to an early childhood program, think about using an environmental scan using a video option. And so this is where you go into YouTube, you put in infant classroom, family child care, or you can use the university's library um, to find you some learning environments to conduct your observation. Next, you're going to do your summary where you're going to provide improvements to the environment, including identifies at least one component of the environment that could be modified or included to support meaningful and active learning for each of the 3 core considerations. And then also, you want to list at least one credible source to support your ideas with correct spelling, grammar, and punctuation, making sure that your summary is 1 to 2 pages, as well as having a title and reference page. And please make sure you are using APA format. So, again, you're doing your discussion, your live classroom submission. So, for your live classroom submission, you are going to enter learning environments in the submission box. And if you guys have any questions about Module 2 or your assignments, please feel free to text or call me at 980-334-4963, or you can email me. So, again, thank you for being patient with me. I hope you guys have a great rest of your evening, a great rest of your week, and a beautiful weekend. I will talk to you soon.